Sinan, hazırsanız başlıyoruz. Tamam. Hı? Hı. Biz başlayalım, onlar gelirler. Değerli dostlar, yoldaşlar, meslektaşlar,
Dear friends, comrades and colleagues, hello again.
Ebru Tiptik anısına düzenlediğimiz, halkın avukatı Ebru Timtik anısına düzenlediğimiz
The symposium we're organizing in honor of Ebru Timtik, the first international symposium. We are on the third day of the first session today, and welcome.
sempozyumumuzun ilk 2 gününde
On the first 2 days of the symposium, as you know,
Timtik anısına bir etkinlik gerçekleştirdik.
we held an event in honor of Ebru Timtik and we commemorated her. And yesterday,
Başarılı olduğunu düşündüğümüz,
a constructive and fruitful 3 sessions took place yesterday, and all the speakers and those made presentations and shared their thoughts. We would like to thank them all once more.
sempozyumumuzun
And today it's the last day of our symposium, and we will be holding the sessions. It's actually the last session, this one is. And after this session, we will have the workshop work. On the first session, we have our esteemed friend Edre Olalia from Philippines. From Germany, Yener Sözer will be speaking, and from Turkey, Nazım Feyzullah Eminoğlu will participate online. And later on, Fuat Baker, who couldn't be with us and who was not granted visa by the Greek state. There is a video recording he sent to the symposium. We will be sharing this. So this is how he will participate into the symposium. And after that, one of the imprisoned people's lawyers, Aytal InTouch, sent a message in text form to the symposium. We will be sharing this. From France, from Paris, our friend esteemed Lasaja will be with us. Again, Selçuk Kozağaçlı, one of the imprisoned people's lawyers, he sent a presentation in writing, so he will participate in this way. And lastly, Oğuzhan Topalkara, our colleague from Turkey, he will participate online. He will be talking about the trial process of the people's lawyers in Turkey, so he will share his thoughts with us. First of all, I would like to give the floor to Edre Olalia from Philippines, our colleague Edre Olalia.
Günaydın. Günaydın, Günay. Turkey and the Philippines have many things in common. Unfortunately, one of the common things is that lawyers, people's lawyers, are under attack. The irony of it all is that lawyers are supposed to defend clients are themselves attacked and denied justice. I will give you just a sketch of the situation in the Philippines insofar as the attacks on lawyers. Okay? In the two administrations, the previous one under Duterte and now the present one under the son of the dictator Marcos, and that is 16 years. There have been 89 judges, lawyers, prosecutors extrajudicially killed in many ways and circumstances. Over the years, there have been 202 other forms of attacks: surveillance, attempted killings, red tagging, labeling, false charges. But under the Duterte administration, there have been 176. The Duterte was the previous administration. 176 attacks related to the exercise of the legal profession. Interestingly, 57 of those attacks are involved in people's lawyering. That's a big percentage. And of course, even judges, 8 judges have been killed. Under the previous administration, these are the figures. Many of them, 65, is what we call labeling, red tagging, or vilification, and the rest would include threats to life, harassment, intimidation, surveillance in many forms, either physically or digitally. And some survive killings, and some have been charged with false cases like violation of the anti-terrorism laws. This is very close to us in NUPL. In these years, there have been 5 murders every year of judges and lawyers. 1 other form of attack every month other than killings. It's close to us. That guy, Benjamin Tarug Ramos, is a colleague of mine. He was finishing a deadline. He took a break, took a smoke outside, but 2 men riding in tandem shot him at close range. Until now, that was in 2018, no justice. Another colleague of mine, he stepped out of his house in front of his backyard. 2 men again in motorcycles shot him. He is also a human rights lawyer. Another colleague of mine, he just came from court. Then 2 men stabbed him with a screwdriver and left him for dead. And that screwdriver stayed in his neck for many hours. They took their laptop, he took his files, but they never took his watch nor his wallet. Another colleague of mine, her paralegal was murdered inside her law office. And another colleague of mine is now in another country because she faces imminent arrest because she is being charged of being a terrorist. Yours truly has been a favorite of red tagging. I'm called an urban operative of the New People's Army, a lawyer holding a gun, going to court as a terrorist. So there has been no let up. Under the present government, there have been already 42 incidents of all forms of attacks. And there have been 3 killings of judges and lawyers already. And if you compare the attacks during Duterte and the attacks during Marcos now, the blue one, you will notice, is even more in the last 18 months. And where do they attack us? All over. That is the Philippines, 33 in the main island, close to the capital, 6 in the middle, and 3 in the island of Mindanao. And of these attacks, 3 have been killed, 39 surveilled, attempted to be killed, and so on and so forth. These are the faces. They're not just numbers. Very young. That lady, she is a public interest lawyer. She is a new lawyer. But then she was killed. You know where? Inside her car, while she was about to park in front of her house. So there has been no justice. And this is the pie that shows the different kinds of attacks. that I already mentioned. And interestingly, my organization is the focus of red tagging, being called terrorists, communist terrorists, urban operatives. Many of us, including my organization, is the target of attacks. So it's our continuing call. We have to stop the attacks. We have to defend our lawyers. In the time of Duterte, there have been 64 judges, prosecutors, lawyers, extrajudicially killed by riding in tandem. Of course, we have talked about the Havana Principles. We know that very well. You should not be identified with your clients or the causes that you represent. You should not be obstructed, impeded, or restricted in the exercise of one's profession. So, with all these facts and figures, why are we being attacked? Why? Why do fascists want us, already endangered, to be extinct? We, as people's lawyers, just like you, have always been vocal against violations of human rights. The attacks against Filipino rights lawyers and many others around the world are orchestrated. They're deliberate. They're not random. They're deliberate to silence us because we are doing our job and duty and for passionately pushing advocacies for the rights and interests of the poor, of the persecuted, and the oppressed. In short, we are attacked because we take on cases, clients, and issues which many others in the legal profession cannot or will not take on. In the concrete, we sued in the Philippines a former president for the illegal arrest and torture of health workers. We imprisoned a red-tagging general for the disappearance of students. We challenge harsh pandemic measures. We junk anomalous search warrants. We defend and free political prisoners. We question malicious freezing of assets of activists. We advocate critical judicial reforms. We jail security forces who are murderers. We save from the gallows at the last minute, literally at the last minute, an innocent overseas domestic worker set up in a foreign land by drug syndicates. We stop fuel, power, and transportation price increases. We hold people's tribunals, indicting anti-democratic leaders and imperialist governments and agencies. We assist in the peace process with the liberation movement. We question the presence of US troops and bases. So why? It is because we frustrated attempts to criminalize activists and peace consultants. We thwarted, trumped up or false charges against farmers, despite the whole machinery of government used upon them. We entrapped a corrupt prosecutor who was getting bribes and had him dismissed and charged criminally. We impeached presidents, 3 already, who violate the Constitution. We utilize accountability measures like the ICC, including crimes against humanity. We oppose draconian laws and frustrate repressive measures of censorship, and much, much, much more, all in a day's work as people's lawyers. So I ever wonder, why do the fascists and their enablers and imperialists want us to be extinct? Because we stand in the way of fascist and imperialist designs. Yet, we have done all this at great cost and surmounted the challenges and threats. Delayed acquittals, arbitrary arrests, prolonged detentions, nuisance suits, deported clients, deaths of clients in jails, and deaths of babies of clients who were deprived of basic maternal care, losses of our own. Unfortunately, even a few members of ours choosing to be inactive because they are afraid, loss of existing and even potential members and clients, economic sacrifices, of course, vicious attacks on our ranks, and I think this is also something common, contradictions and struggles with our own families, with our colleagues, with our friends and classmates. Why are you doing that? You're supposed to be a lawyer. You should be rich. You should be relaxed. This is what we are facing. Is it all worth it? Is it all worth it? Is it all worth it? In the end, when we do our legal accounting, we use the standard of empowering the people as our ultimate measure. It is all worth it. It is all worth it. But there is so much to do. And there is so much to be undone too. Just too many. But with international support and solidarity, we will continue to push back, carry on, and we will overcome. Thank you very much.
Sevgili Edre Olalya teşekkür ediyoruz.
Thank you to dear Edre Olalia. Edre Olalia,
Halkın Avukatları Ulusal Birliği
Philippines People's
İADL eş başkanı. Filipinler'de Halkın Avukatları
National People's Lawyers Association, also the
olduğu gibi
co-chair of the AIDL, and the People's Lawyers in Philippines, just like the lawyers in Turkey are under attack. They have lots of similarities. Yesterday,
Edre'nin
the Edre had this remark.
çok benziyor ülkelerimiz.
Our countries are very look-alike,
Benzer
and what we're going through are very similar. We get killed, murdered in the Philippines. In Turkey, you get arrested. Yes, that's true. Today,
bilmiyor belki ama
maybe the lawyers are not massacred in Turkey, but
10 yıllarda, 90'lı yıllarda
in the last 10 years, in the years of 1990s, most of our lawyers were
salonda
murdered. You would see their pictures of them in this hall. They were killed by the counter-guerrilla
Türkiye'de polis teşkilatı
in
tarafından
Turkey by the police institution and by the soldiers.
bugün Türkiye'de benzer katliamların
And today,
katledilmemesinin
this
sebebi
the reason why there is not similar murders and killings in Turkey is because is not because Turkey is much more democratic than Philippines, or the society struggle or the struggle within the lawyering field is enormous. It's not because of that. This is conjectural state, but when fascism have the needs, they will continue to massacre, and time to time,
katletme boyutuna varmasa da çok ağır
maybe it's not at the stage of murdering, but there is heavy tortures or punishments.
aynı politikayı
The same policies are imposed against the people's lawyers with the same line of enemy thoughts.
Filipinler'deki gibi avukatlar
In Turkey, the main reason why the lawyers is not massacred like the lawyers in Philippines is because us lawyers, the organized struggle, despite the state's terror, we continue our struggle with determination and organized struggle since 1990s.
Türkiye'de yaşanan bu baskıyı, bu
And
zulmü, terörü, devlet terörü
before all, this oppression and this terror state, In one way or another, we've been explaining to the world and exposing this attacks, and therefore the international solidarity is very important to carry on the message of each country to another. What's happening in Philippines shouldn't be limited to Philippines. What we're facing in Turkey, the tortures, imprisonments, attacks on us, any attack on our profession, with the common struggle, there must be a reason for it. So there must be a reason for the international solidarity. So in order to repel these attacks, we need to organize the international solidarity and common struggle together. And we would like to thank Edro Olalia once again, explaining us the pressures and oppression the lawyers are facing in Philippines, valuable information. Thank you. Now I would like to give the floor to our colleague, Yener Sözener.
Thanks very much, Günay. I'm going to be speaking Turkish. Dear friends, dear colleagues, dear guests, welcome. I'm coming from Germany. Anna Bussel and Roland Meister, my colleagues who spoke before me. There is a case in the Federal Court of Germany, DHKPC, RPLP, Revolutionary People Liberation Party and Front case, and I've brought the salutes and greetings of the people who are being on a trial under this case, and I would like to thank you all who made an effort to organize such a gathering. Thanks very much for bringing us together. Dear friends, today, yesterday, and the day before, we have been talking about law from various perspectives based on the reality of different countries. There were some valuable presentations by our colleagues. And today, the topic is about the attacks that the lawyers are facing. But before I go there, I would like to say make a couple of general remarks. We are always told that rule of law is something that must be taken serious. But it's a myth. During our studying years in law faculties, we are forced to believe that myth. And this myth is also imposed on the society in general. But I don't believe the rule of law, or the rule of classical law. But there's a law that I have faith in, and this is the law that has been gained through hundreds of years of struggle. It is the law of the oppressed people imposed on the ruling class. Be it the family law or business law, human rights, labor union rights, no need to mention all of them. Whatever there is that is in favor of the oppressed sections of the society, they are all gained as a result of a harsh struggle. They are never granted by the ruling class to the oppressed. As a lawyer, my duty is to protect those gained rights and as a tiny part of a developing social struggle, my duty is to develop it further, to pave the way for such a struggle. That's why legal profession, being a lawyer, we don't need to put our profession on a pedestal. Like, very much like the other professions, healthcare workers, public officers, students, farmers, we are a component of the society. And our role is positive to the extent that we succeed in becoming a part of this society. As a part of this, such a composition, we are trying to do our best to advance the rights, to protect them. And I believe this is our duty. Now, I work as a lawyer in Germany. I usually take cases, take political cases, political criminal cases, like our friends, other friends from Germany, such as Anna. In Germany, as far as I know, there are no lawyers under arrest. However, the lawyers, very much like all around the world, there are attacks against the decent lawyers who try to become a part of this social effort. Compared to some of our colleagues who pay a heavy price, you may say that the pressures that we are facing are insignificant, but the violations against our rights must be measured within the context of each country. Especially in political cases, I would like to give a couple of examples so that you can have a better grasp of it. Before us, there is this Düsseldorf case, and before that, 129A, 129B cases. Apart from the attacks and violations towards our clients, there were attacks and violations on us as lawyers. Anna and Roland elaborated on this. They have talked about the contents and sanctions of those articles 129A and 129B. Starting from the very moment our clients were arrested, since they were labeled as the enemy by the ruling class, they were not treated as normal citizens before the court. They were deprived of their main fundamental rights because they were the enemy. They must be destroyed. That's why they are isolated and they make an attempt to deprive them of all their rights. As lawyers, we are treated as the defenders of their enemies. So we are considered to be an enemy as well. We are treated as people who stain their sublime standard classical law. In Turkey, in Philippines, in Iran, where the contradiction is most tangible, unlike those societies, we are treated within the ethical framework of a bourgeois society. And how does it work? Our clients are isolated, and we, as the lawyers, can only interview our clients behind glass doors or glass separators that are totally soundproof. And it is very elaborately designed to be put in a legal article. This is a political case, they say. The political prisoner is still a member of a terrorist organization that is still active outside of the prison, and between this prisoner and the terrorist organization, the communication is maintained, carried out by their lawyers. So lawyers, we are as if we are transmitting information between the terrorist organization and the members of that organization. This is how they perceive it. As mentioned by my colleague from Philippines, it's like putting the Havana principles in a trash bin, but it's still done. It's still the practice. And again, we know this from Havana principles. Between the clients and the lawyers, the communication between them cannot be supervised, cannot be controlled. But in the cases in Germany, such a right does not exist. From the very beginning, the confidentiality between the client and the lawyer is supervised by a judge who was specifically appointed for that purpose. So, whenever we provide some tactical information or tactical documentation for our clients so that they succeed in the trial, are all checked by a particularly assigned judge so that they don't contain any so-called harmful material. This is valid for all the cases, like the Düsseldorf case. And apart from this, bourgeois democratic ethical principles of the profession, if we step beyond these principles and we misbehaved, then, by the way, they determine what is a misbehavior and a proper behavior. We are faced with sanctions. Another example, Eda, Özgül Emre, my client. My client, Özgül Emre, has just declared a hunger strike. It was mentioned by Eda yesterday. Despite the fact that he has the right to wear his own clothes, his clothes of his own choosing, he was imposed to wear a uniform and he declared a hunger strike. And from the very moment that he declared a hunger strike, he made an application to the prison administration to receive salt, sugar, and vitamin B. Otherwise, he would starve to death and he would start to have some health problems. Despite the fact that I've informed the prison administration, apart from this, he wasn't given a vitamin B, he wasn't given any sugars, and he wasn't given any salt. He was just given a cup of tea with some sugar in it. Because of the raising concerns about the health conditions of my client, I have submitted a petition to the highest court's judge in Germany, and I explained the situation. And the judge decided that my client could wear his own clothes. But despite that, the prison administration, just showing the statute of the prison, they said that they are not going to observe, they're not going to implement the judgment by the highest court in Germany. I'm just telling this so you can understand their perspective, how they view us. This is the reason that they gave us. They said from inside to the outside and from outside to the inside. The civilian clothes, their numbers, their colors, and their form could be used as a confidential communication tool between the prisoner and the terrorist organization that he is a member of. So there's my client melting away day by day, and my last resort to help him was to make a press statement, an illegal press statement, a non-legal measure of press statement. So all the legal measures were exhausted, and the press statement that I made has been turned into a declaration and has been published and distributed as a leaflet all around the towns that are surrounding the prison, and the prison administration was really disturbed by this, bothered by this. They then made a press statement saying that I have taken this action intentionally in order to fling mud on the prisons within the country, which meant stepping beyond the ethical principles of legal profession, and they issued a criminal complaint to the Bar Association that I'm a member of, so that the Bar Association launched an investigation against me. I mean, such kind of investigations, we never mind them, but it is just to discipline us. They are trying to show us our boundaries. Under the conditions of the German context, such kind of acts are significant because the young lawyers who want to become political lawyers like us are intimidated by such kind of attacks, such kind of interventions. That's why in Germany, there is a significant new generation problem. The number of youngsters who want to become political lawyers are not that much. Our average age is around 65 nowadays. So this is a significant problem. There are other kinds of sanctions too. A refugee who was about to be sent away, whenever they come to us to make a reapplication to gain a refugee status, and whenever we help them, we are accused of illegally providing assistance to such kind of illegal migrants, illegal refugees. As I have said, legal profession is just a minute part of a larger scheme. That's why the attacks and sanctions against the lawyers are caused by the concrete reality of that country. In Philippines, in Turkey, in many other countries, there is open fascism. And the price you will pay, of course, is much more severe, much heavier. But in Germany, in France, in Belgium, and in those so-called democratic countries, this doesn't mean that we are not facing any kinds of sanctions just because they are bourgeois democracy. But as mentioned by dear Günay, despite everything, there is a way to stand against such kind of attacks. Organizing in professional chambers and institutions alike. We need to be organized. We need to be able to wage an organized struggle and make it a part of a larger struggle. Unfortunately, I can't say that we are in a better place in Germany. That's why, in order to fend off these attacks, we need to make an individual effort. And this shows how important it is to be able to wage an organized struggle. As mentioned by Günay, I don't want to repeat that point. In conclusion, on our walls, we have the pictures of our colleagues who paid heavy prices, as mentioned by my colleague from Philippines. And I would like to pay respect to all those colleagues who paid heavier prices in their struggle. Thanks very much.
Değerli meslektaşım Yener Sözen'e teşekkür ediyorum. Gerçekten çok önemli
I
noktalara
would like to
değindi.
thank our dear colleague, Yener Sözen. He really touched on very important points. We also touched on this yesterday, and then Yener did it today. Lawyering, it's a way to open the path for the societal struggle.
Hukuksal engeller çıkarıldığında halkın
When the path is obstructed and there's obstructions in lawyering for the people's lawyers, and our duty is to overcome these barriers.
burada konuştuğumuz halkın avukatlığına yönelik burada konuştuğumuz saldırıların tasfiye amaçlı saldırıların
And today, when we talk about the people's lawyers and the eradication of their profession, this is what we are trying to emphasize on. And as my
ödenmesini gerektiren
colleague has mentioned, maybe
katliam boyutuna varan saldırılar yaşanmıyor avukatlara.
maybe the attacks on the lawyers there is not as significant as the lawyers in Turkey or in Philippines, but he mentioned they are facing attacks and obstructions, and with the Havana agreement about the connection or the communication with the lawyer and their clients,
önünü açmaya çalıştıkları için, tıkanan yollar açmaya çalıştıkları için soruşturmalar geçirmesi, meslektaşımıza açılan
and like our lawyer said, there's been put on discipline charges, or they've been investigated on disciplinary procedures because of the deemed accusations. And like, for example, Roland went through the same procedures in the past. There has been disciplinary proceedings against him or accusations. So whatever it is in the world, these attacks on the lawyers exist anywhere. And as I said earlier mentioned, the main point is, and the solution to this is to struggle together and set a common struggle path and strengthen the international solidarity and expand on the events like this, obviously not only organizing symposiums, but setting up institutions and organizations on a national and international level. As our colleague mentioned, organizations that we need to set up is to be part of the societal struggle. And not an organization that I'm talking of is not as such organizations coming together in events and just talking and all the words only stay on the papers. Organizations that opens the paths for us to organizing the solidarity and standing against these attacks together and setting up barriers against these attacks. So this is the main point of the organizations that we need to set up. So one of the main reasons of the symposium is actually this, setting up organizations, and this is what we're aiming. And hopefully at the end of the symposium, we can all agree on this sort of an example that I set out. And now I leave the floor to Naim Eminoglu, and he will be with us online. And as you know, on the 6th of February, against the people's lawyers, there has been a new attack. And there is as a result of a conspiracy, our colleagues has been arrested. You can see the pictures here. Seda Şaraldı, Didem Baydar Ünsal, and Betül Kozağaçlı were imprisoned as a result of this conspiracy. And about this conspiracy and attack, Naim will share his details